Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us on this session. You may have noticed that this year the number of panels, discussions, and talks have increased. Regarding livestock. So in our industry, we're very happy about this, and we hope that this continues. We're sorry to hear that Mr. Isaldi was not able to come and join us today, but we have these two other speakers. Increasing livestock competitiveness is the title of this talk. I'd like to make a brief introduction on some aspects of this market. Consumers, local consumers, consume meat and beef. And there are two things that have to do with the market that in other places of the world is quite the opposite. This is a question about the future of, the demand of our domestic market. Competitiveness is the issue of this panel. Payments are financed with extravagant terms. In general, in other parts of the world, farmers take the livestock and come back with the payment. Here, the cycle takes about 30 days. Current administrations, despite their effort, there is still a lot of tax evasion, and we hope that this is addressed. But since this is approached, we are concerned about environmental and social aspects. And since this was not announced before, if the panel members have something to say about it, they will do so. But this topic could be included in the next congresses or agendas that we think the livestock industry should be addressed. Livestock is transported to big cities. Thousands and thousands of kilometers of routes are being contaminated. We know that 40% of the waste is in big cities. People don't know what to do with garbage, and this adds to thousands and thousands. And to a large extent, this waste could be used to generate electricity or for other purposes. If slaughterhouses could be distributed across the country, this would not only impact on the topics that I mentioned, the issues I mentioned before, but it also impact on society. We all know that farming sector or part of the farming sector migrates to large cities, and then we have social problems. This, without a doubt, will contribute to reverse the situation. Freights would be cheaper, considerably cheaper, and this would be even better if these plants would be settled where products are produced, and if value were added there, which is possible, then freights would be reduced considerably because the transported value would be higher than today, and that would be important. Finally, as we transport the livestock, be transporting livestock less and less, this would this would reduce the stress, and this would impact on better product that is demanding in the supermarket. So these are things we'll be able to address in the future. Thank you very much. Let's now move on to the panel member presentations.
I will talk on behalf of the private sector, then Rodrigo will talk about the public sector. It's clear that bovine or beef in the world has a very favorable scenario. I repeat Winston Churchill's phrase, I'm optimistic. There's nothing else that seems to be helpful right now regarding livestock breeding, even considering the adverse climate efforts. Beef production will present a very favorable scenario in the mid and long term. It's clear because supply is being outnumbered by the demand. This is creating some tension. The USDA measures since 2007 the prices. They measure the prices. They found that they are by 2017 with higher prices, by 10% higher prices. Beef demand in the world, this is a work done by the FAO in 2012. In 2012, 60 million metric tons were produced. And we will need in the future 85% more or beef to meet the demand. The challenge here is a sustainable production. I think that this parameter is too high. It's not easy to reach this 85% growth. There are not many places in the world that will be able to meet this demand. South America is one of them that has 25% of the bovine cattle stock. Brazil, Paraguay, and Argentina. Argentina has the highest potential. In the primary stage of the change, producers need to consider increasing productivity per hectare. It's important to consider the prices because it will help us to project profitability of our production, but we need to consider how much we produce per hectare. There are many state-of-the-art producers that are applying precision technology, and they are increasing their yields, but there are many others that are not producing the necessary amount of beef. I live in Casilla, close to Rosario. Here we have mixed systems. Close to the Carcarañá River, land around that river are not so fit for agricultural practice, so we breed livestock there. I remember Robert Louis Steven, Man and the Beast. the producers here are the same as people in this book, as Dr. Jekyll in this book, because and the livestock represent Mr. Hyde. And really, they are not interested in having served cows or not. So item number one, increase productivity per hectare. The state is another important link in this chain. Many things have been done since 2015 are not advertised in the government. I've just been objective in telling facts. We reduced export taxes. We streamlined the procedures. We eliminated the informal market of beef. There is still a lot to be done, but we have made progress, and so this gives everybody equal opportunity. It provides transparency, and it speeds up the opening of markets that will help us increase the portfolio for livestock. The government is doing a lot along these lines. Rodrigo will be more precise. Working groups have been created. They developed a new typing or typification system that will be enforced as of next January. It is very user-friendly. On the industry side, there's a lot to be done still. I think that the industry needs to start in the medium and long term how we will reconsider our role, because the consumer is changing, consumption is changing. There are plenty of business opportunity, and we have to take all of them. We don't have to miss any of them. We need to become a more mature industry. I don't want to have a concentrated industry, but what I do want is to provide equal opportunities to everybody, and everybody should be able to offer a competitive product and should be able to reach every market. I think that there are two words that will define the next few years: competitiveness and integration. Competitiveness means that we have to increase our yield in the industry. We know that Argentina has a low slaughter price, and this results in having high production cost in the industry, because slaughter lines can work with 120 animals per hour. If these animals cost 20, if the yield is 220 kilos per carcass, it will is different if we consider this from another point of view. We need to increase competitiveness, increasing the kilos per hook. Regarding integration, there's no opposition between foreign market and domestic markets. We won't have any longer domestic slaughterhouses or exporting slaughterhouses. We need to increase revenue, and we need to disseminate this across the chain. Our market uses 85%, or the foreign market uses 85% of domestic production. In some cuts, we can achieve very good prices internationally. The backwaters are very highly appreciated, around the world, because the prices that we can offer are very competitive compared with the prices around the world. The markets do what they want. They want feedlot cattle, they want pasture cattle. It's the same for them. They want beef. How can we differentiate this product? Basically, with this new typification system, we need to be able to have a differential labeling system. We can write everything in the labels or with barcodes, but we need to follow very stringent standards as the quality protocols that need to be validated and audited. Australians are very aggressive commercially. If you go to Australia in any stand in expos, they have a brochure for whatever you can think of. Feedlot cattle, pasture cattle, or grazing cattle. Here to the right, you have the logo of the Australian beef. The Ministry of Agro-Industry is working as well on a quality protocol for Argentine beef. I will talk about sustainability, which is very important, and I will show why it is so important. There is a new consumers generation called the millennials. They were born on the 21st century or in the late 20th century. The important thing that in 7 to 10 years they will represent 75% of the labor force in the world. They will have a high purchasing power and they will be very exquisite in their choices. This is what I mean by having differential labels. There are different labels or signs that are attached to the beef. You can tell whether it is grazing cattle or feedlot cattle. Natural beef, for example, this is in US. Australia, as they don't have this habit of different cooking degrees, they have to give an instruction for each cat so that the consumer knows how a specific cut has to be cooked. The X generation were raised with everything that we find to the left. And now everything is streamlined or simplified in the cell phone. Millennials are digital native or native digital, and they became adults, or they grew with the century turn or with the turn of the century. They are unloyal. They need to strengthen trust relationships to to be loyal to the products they consume. They require new values such as transparency, sustainability, social commitment, and the future commitment of companies. Here, everything is very ephemeral and uncertain. Gratification becomes the youngest child of happiness. Food as a lifestyle. Beyond the millions of photographs in Instagram with hashtag food, we see that 63% of people under 32 published in the social media pictures of the meals. They are sort of specialized and they promote what they do, they show what they do. And when they do so, they consider quality rather than price. What do millennials think regarding the beef sector or the meat sector? We need to advocate for this because we have 30% in each of this. 30% had a negative or are critical. 40% or 30% are neutral, and 32% are really enthusiastic and they have a positive attitude. They consider, they take into account sustainability. Where there is pollution, there is not environmental pollution. Where there is, this entails the production of greenhouse effect gases, and we do know that cattle produce greenhouse gases. I think that the most important thing we have to focus on is explaining this. Regarding gas, we have very low productivity in our herds. We have we need 2 cows to produce 1 calf per year. And the important thing is that if we take this into account, we should increase productivity in our farms because we would increase, because per kilo of produced beef, we would mitigate the emission of greenhouse gas. I could keep on time this time, surprisingly enough. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Enrique from Apresid, for inviting me. I will ask for permission. I want to stand because I feel I'm very far from the audience. Good morning, everybody. I wanted to share with you what we are doing regarding public policies, livestock public policies. In the Ministry of Agroindustry and Livestock, we have very similar working agenda. These are the focuses of our work. We have the same agenda as you have. We don't have a livestock plan so huge. We focus on specific topics, and we are always adding things to the agenda. Sometimes we eliminate things from the agenda because we have settled them, or sometimes because we need to include new things and do away with old things. So we need to become competitive, so we need to be dynamic. What is the role of the national government and the Ministry of Agroindustry is to create the necessary environment, the necessary business environment for you. So to facilitate things so that the growers do what they're expected to do. They have to produce, they have to focus on prices, the industry has to be efficient, should focus on foreign markets to add value. And the state, the government, has to focus on doing things for this to happen, to facilitate all these activities. The agenda includes ordering, streamlining, financing, markets, health, and productivity. And I take Probably in 2 years' time, we could continue talking about the environment, the greenhouse gases, wastewaters. What are we doing with that? Productive efficiency is also impacts on the environment and on the use of resources and increase of production. I selected two topics from the agenda to talk in detail. Typification, where are we doing with meat or beef typification, and this issue of ordering. If we want to be competitive, we cannot be as informal as we are today. We cannot talk about competitiveness if we don't tackle this issue of informality. This has to do with tax evasion. This has to do with health and sanitation, and this has to do with public health, and also it has to do with opening and closing markets. If we really want to have a real work agenda, we need to focus on ordering the supply chains. Streamlining also has to do with competitiveness. We unblock things every day. Ricardo Negri from the Senasa talked about the debureaucratization of Senasa. We are eliminating steps day after day. I invite you to consider in December 2019 and compare how the procedures were like 3 or 4 years ago.
That's why we changed the cattle identification system, connectivity. We're also working with the provinces to standardize guidelines. This is reducing the number of paperwork, and then funding. Besides the current policies regarding taxes or non-taxes, there are tools that are being discussed. For example, 7-year loans by the international banks. That is building a structure that is necessary for the sector. A tax on livestock. Today, we saw that there were $30 billion in livestock in Argentina that was not possible to be taken as warranty. This is a reality. So when you get to a bank today, so instead of you can the livestock would be inhibited. So you could not sell them until you pay off the loan. And this is a very different dynamics. This is part of the policy, the kind of tools we need to have. All of this these are tools and solutions. This is part of a shared vision. What Jorge was saying, taxes were removed, were lifted, and we had this aggressive policy was also lifted. This is the long term, which is already medium and short term, I would say. But this is the vision we all share, and we know where we're heading. And from this, based on this, then we need to provide you with these tools. That's why long-term funding. That's why a better warranty systems, simplifying or streamlining paperwork or bureaucracy, and we are reviewing all of the health contracts. In Argentina, you will be able to have for example, TB programs. There are programs that are 20 years old that were successful in the past, but they need to be reviewed. That were good for some specific issues back then, but now they have to be revised. And from the market perspective and information perspective, we are planning to typify or classify So classification. Let's talk about quality. The classification, the means of classification dates back from 1969. This is classification of animals and the beef sides. So now we want to have animal classification based on dentition and age. This is the change we'll be seeing next year. So everything that is traded for slaughtering will be classified into calves, and so up to 4 teeth. Then it's the cut of what we would call cows and calves. Straightforward and based on age, so as to move into the product quality. So based on the animal classification, then it's the beef side classification. This is fats and concussions. This is part of the classification that we're working on. And then another classification that has to do with the meat quality. This is the color of fats, the color of the flesh. And then we will be able to measure what we are producing. And this is adding value. Investments in terms of genetics, what people are doing in terms of seeds. There's a lot of technology. There's no way to detect what we did before. How can we sell genetics if we don't have that information recorded? We cannot see this in terms of product quality. This is what we want to do. We want farmers to have this information, so we want to design a tool so that you can have this data on your cell phones, for example, installing cameras in the slaughterhouse. It has to have information about the productivity and the quality of the meat. So we are just saying that what we produce should be effective or objective, and then the market chooses based on cost or benefit. This aims at achieving productivity and getting rid of means or a weighing. So when this gets to when the animal is and slaughterhouses, to add value, have to work on the product.
We have to be products in that product quality. What is good have to be paid at a high price, and what is of a lower quality deserves a lower price. Now we are exporting cows to China. It is the best product quality, no, but it is the most profitable. And this allows us to look into the long term. This improvement processes related to quality is what will make the difference. And differentiated means distributing the profitability in a more uniform manner. This is typification. And then the ordering. We probably have heard a lot in Argentina people saying we already work on that. The meat and livestock or cattle chain is the worst to deal with. Why this time couldn't it be different? Why couldn't we make true the dream of quality and going into the markets? We are convinced that this time it is different, and this is why there is a complete believe that this will be different. A complete belief means that you and the president and everybody is really believing that this will be different. There are situations and there are specific moments and different interests. We need to reach a consensus, and on the basis of that consensus, the government will make decisions, more Solomonic decisions, because we won't always agree on everything. This time is different because the president meets with us every 2 months, and so he wants to know what the progress has been during those 2 months. So we are responsible for making progress. The president, the minister, the other ministries, the private sector, the provinces, we are all convinced. Growers, producers, and industry. We cannot think in terms of long. We cannot think of long terms if the chain is not ordered, and there's no going back here because what has been designed in the past 2 years is a network. Each agency depends on or relies on the other agency. When we started, we have different states because we have the IRS or the tax office, we have the ministry. Now the state is only one, and we are convinced about that. And knowing that, we are working jointly. It's not that we work jointly because somebody tells us, okay, work together, because all the systems that are beneath what you can't see are interconnected. Agro-industry relies on the province relies on the national state. So systems force us to work in a joint manner. This time it is different and there's no going back. These are specific indicators of how we are working. The industry is lying who is responsible for the slaughterhouse. Of the national slaughtering in January 2017, 25% of the slaughter was done by slaughterhouses, and the rest was from the cold storage facility. Now in May 2018, we have a different number. This means transparency. In Buenos Aires, now, only 1 year and a half later, things are far more transparent. The same with cooperatives. They represent 8 to 10% of the national slaughtering. When we took office, the percentage of the slaughtering was done on behalf of the cooperative, 100%. Now, only 23% is slaughtered by the co-op. These are real specific ordering data. Health control, and we started with single health standards, starting with the Buenos Aires province. We have 39 provincial cold storage facilities. The law for the nation is the same as for the provinces. Twice a week, there is a team from Senasa that on Wednesdays and on Thursday visit the 39 cold storage facilities in the province with the owners and the veterinarians. They are required to submit a checklist. If you don't comply with the requirements, you will be punished in some way. And we meet also the mayors of the district where these cold storage facilities are. We have visited so far 19 cold storage facilities. Only 7 remained open, and others were closed because they were not meeting the requirements. Some of them took only a week to meet all the requirements, and some of them 2 months. This is true. This is the single health standard that we all needed. Also, we are talking about smart fiscalization. These are systems. This is not the opinion of a single person. It's not somebody that is powerful can do things. This won't work. We are talking about artificial intelligence. I know now with electronic scale, I know the weight of the beef produced. I know how many heads were slaughtered, how many animals were slaughtered, what the yield is, what the loss is. And the system has an automatic alarm, and so I can immediately know if there is some deviation in slaughter facilities. I know that automatically, so I can call back the person responsible for the slaughterhouse and ask him, here is a deviation. How can you explain this to me? If I know that this time this will be different because we are all convinced that it will be different, that we all want a different country. If we have a president that meets every 2 months to make a follow-up of our agenda, this shows that things will be different. Thank you very much. I'll be glad to answer your questions. Please, I want you to be convinced, to be persuaded that this time things will be different. We are all responsible for this. When you work in your establishments, when you are efficient, when you comply with the submittance of documentation, when you want to buy steers and you say, I will buy this steer on behalf of Juan, but you are not Juan, you are Pedro. If you are not Juan, I won't sell this cattle to you. And so if you want to buy your own cattle, you will have to be registered. Otherwise, nobody will sell you cattle on behalf of somebody else. And so the process will accommodate and we will get sooner to where we want to go.
Bueno, brillante Jorge y Rodrigo. Mientras que siguen mandando preguntas, recuerden el número para mandar un WhatsApp.
You can ask questions with the WhatsApp. What I get from this is how promising the market is, as Jorge said, and the hard work that the state is doing, the national government is doing. But to summarize, I could say that we should all be involved in this business. Of course, we have to require things from the state, but if this works, is because all the links, all the players in the chain are involved. So that would be the take-home message. Rodrigo, when will be able to use implants again? What a good question. Those of you who know me exactly know that I worked a lot in the private sector to bring back that technology. I believe in that technology and in production efficiency. When you sit on the other side, the needs the country has are different. Now we produce for a number of countries with different requirements. I don't think that this will be possible in the short term. I don't know what can happen in the long term. Now we are focusing on opening markets and streamlining all the procedures. The control and fiscalization system is not the one we like best and wouldn't allow us to have these tools available for the domestic market without impacting on or putting at stake the increase in exports that we have achieved with sales records in $1 million. I don't think that this will be part of our short-term plan, and we don't have any figure for that. This question is too long, and I don't know who asked the question or to whom it's addressed. We talk about competitiveness, about efficiency improvement, beef quality, consumers' demand, especially the millennials. Argentina has a basic sin that has been mentioned by a speaker. They produce 63 calves every 100 cows. Without improving that efficiency, we won't be able to improve in a consistent manner beef production. The question: are you considering how to give incentives to the producers so that rate can be improved? Why don't you massively improve methods that are well known? The incentive is we will continue growing, but this is an individual responsible of each producer. Technology is available. With INTA, we have made up an interactive map. If you go to the website, you will find what are the restrictions in each district and what tools are available. And it's difficult to talk about averages because it is not the same Corrientes and the province of Buenos Aires. In Buenos Aires, we don't produce 63 calves. We are above 70 plus. So the potential is not the same everywhere, but the same incentive is in the serious country that we wish to become. If 63 is being inefficient, that producer continues existing without being efficient. I think that if we work on doing away with informality, we will be able to bridge that gap. If a producer can live with the 60%, and sometimes, or maybe that we have more producers that can produce more, and so they will progress more. We should ask ourselves why there are some producers that want to remain at the 63%. Regarding efficiency in cattle breeding, in Santa Fe, in the northern part, the cow-calf ratio is 49%, so we are below that number. It is important for the producer to see what is the price that he will obtain for his production. But if this good price had not been obtained by the free play of supply and demand, we know that if demand is not high, prices go down. So how can we improve productivity, improving the productivity in our own farms? In my province, every 100 cows, they produce 48, 49 calves. Changing methodology, health management or reproductive management, improving that, they improve by 20 calves the efficiency. And this will mean an additional income of money, and this is only achieved applying low-cost technology. We need to take into account that in many regions the rate is higher than that. It's 80 or 85. So if we have an average of 63, this means that in some regions this number is very low. How feedlots are financed with the cost in dollars now and the difficulties to have loans or credits because the rate is very high. This is part of our reality as a country. This is a situation we want to get away of. This happens with the dairy farms, with the poultry establishments, with the feedlots, or with the hog production or pig production. When we intensify our practices, we have higher cost in dollars. For instance, animal feed is expensive. This is the same that happened in 2016, not in beef cattle, because the adjustment occurred after the elimination of export taxes. But the truth is that this is our reality, and how they can be financed as they have been doing it so far. Rates are at 40%. Inflation is something very negative, is perverse, not only for people that have the strongest need, but really for everybody, for you. We are working on inflation, and that's why we will be able to prevent or to predict the future. That's why we are dealing with 40% rates. Can you explain how do you go about the control of cold storage facilities? Can growers have access to that information? Yes. With your phone applications, you can have access to the yield of your herds. The safety chambers and scales started on May the 1st. We are only adjusting the system so that this can be available to the grower. With a quid or with a DPE, they have information about the yield of your herd. Probably this won't be achieved this year, but probably it will be available next year. The control system that we are achieving with the black boxes is that we capture the carcass weight, and with the cameras, it also checks that there's no cheating. It exactly gives the weight. If you don't trust cold storage facilities, I wonder why. The system is quite efficient, and the information that we will have, the precise information that you will have, has to do with the weight of the carcass. There's no way to have cheating there, because this goes directly from the hook to the black box. And the Ministry of Agro-Industry selected very carefully the supplier of this equipment. How can we grow the cattle stock if we consider what the market is like? What our growth in high aptitude agriculture and livestock production, there's no cap to the possibilities of production. Remember that in order to meet the future demand, we will need to increase our beef production by 88 or to 85%. If I have a bolt factory, I need to, and I know that the demand will increase, I have to consider many things. I can partner with somebody else. But in the meat production, I know that when I start producing, my product will be placed in different markets. Probably the lower quality beefs that can be sent to China, for example, or heavier cattle that can be sent to other markets. This would be, for example, exporting to United States, and this would generate a cascade effect or a domino effect, because through US we would be able to reach other markets. The question is, should we have a more efficient herd, or I should increase my stock, and this would be achieved changing the average carcass weight. It depends on how many markets we attract, and this ordering, this doing away with informality. If you start to work in a more efficient manner, by nature or naturally, you will be increasing the slaughter prices. Mr. Torelli talked about increasing the slaughter price. How can we achieve 400 kilograms when the cost of the kilo is higher, the sales price is lower? Small producers cannot support that. Not being able to support that is true. In order to increase the slaughter weight, what we need is to rebreed animals and to send them to the feedlot, or with a mixed system with the strategic supplements. But we need to put them into the feedlot with higher weight in order to not to over breed them. Many things have been done, but many things has to be done still. It's not easy to obtain financing, and not with an interest rate of 40%. So producers need try to sell the animals with a borderline slaughter weight. The truth is that in other parts of the world, animals are sold at a higher weight. We know that it's not the same, the meat of a 400 kilos animals than a 300 kilos animal. Also, the timing between the slaughters and the sales has to be considered. You don't need to increase the slaughter weight for its own sake. You need to have profitability. This is the answer. Theory tells me that I need to increase the slaughter weight, but the practical thing is that the producer has to be profitable. And if it is more profitable to have 300 kilos cattle, or carcasses, I will have to continue with that weight. And probably with the modifications we are doing in the short term and in the short term or the long term, we will reach naturally to the desired weight. Why should we regulate by law the minimum slaughter weight and not allow the market to regulate that? We all want to increase the slaughter weight, but given the economic situation today, it's very difficult to keep the animals in the feedlot. This standard has been on since 2005. We have already discussed this with the private sector. We all prefer to produce freely and to have a free market. Sometimes it's it's not sincere talking about freedom in the market if the market is so informal. If we didn't have informality, we would all have higher weights of our carcasses at slaughter. The market will lead you, but that's not the truth, because there are efficiency losses because of the informality, and this brings about inefficiency to the market, to the industry as well. This is a political decision that has been made on the basis of consensus. But I cannot say the only valid answer would be that this depends on a political decision. The ideal thing is do not allow governments to interfere in the market, because they sometimes disrupt things. But we are not mature enough to have a free market. And in the future, if we want, if there is a producer that wants to, no, if there is a consumer that prefers to consume light-weighted animals, so he or she will be expected to pay the difference.